And we're live.
Hi students, I'm Mr. Marchant. As you probably know, this is Officer Ellsworth here. We wanted to take a moment and talk with you today, particularly about school shootings. In our country, as a lot of you probably know, most recently down in Florida, there have been a lot of these events. And we wanted to touch base with everyone and make sure that we're on the same page as a school here at Show Low, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to prevent these events from happening. So I've got a few things that I'm going to go over with Officer Ellsworth here, and the main thing that we want to discuss is what we call, if you see something, you need to say something. Okay, so if you remember one thing from this today, if you see something, you want to say something. So we're going to talk about that. So Officer Ellsworth, what are some behaviors that students should be looking for? What sort of things would you see that maybe should be reported?
Yeah, so typically what we try to get everyone to start looking for is anybody that's acting out, showing like very violent behavior, even people who are separating themselves from crowds or singling themselves out. You guys are probably going to notice something on social media before you do anything. If you start seeing kids posting messages that has to do with severe violence, or they start talking about school shootings or anything like that, those are the type of things that you're going to see first.
Yeah, so obviously, if they're saying something specific about, I've got a gun, I'm going to shoot up the school, things like that, obviously those are the report. But, I mean, what are some other specific triggers that maybe you would see that someone might not think of, but something, I mean, we were talking earlier, you were saying stuff about, if they're doing things to animals and, things like that. Can you speak more into some of the vague things that you might hear?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're seeing where these people are doing these acts of violences in schools and in the community is that they've showed a history of being violent towards animals. There's some weird association to these people who are torturing animals at the same time as being super violent at school, or they could even be very quiet. They may kind of take themselves out of the crowd and maybe start mentioning certain things that sound alarming. And recently with this issue that happened in Florida, when they interviewed the kids after the shooting took place, most of them said that they knew that kid was going to do that one day. So what we want to do is just make sure that if everybody hears something, that they're definitely reporting it to the correct people so we can look into it and make sure that nobody gets hurt.
Okay, so let's talk about that now. So like I said at the beginning, if you see something, then you want to say something. So what does that look like? Here at Show Low, I'm a student at Show Low High School, and I see this kid, he's tweeting a bunch of stuff, or he's putting it on Snapchat, and I may think, he's just kind of being dumb, but at the same time, it may be something serious and I need to report. So what is the best method to go about reporting something that I've seen?
Yeah, so for you guys, the best way to handle something like that, if you see it on social media, because you guys are going to see it before we do, before the staff does, or before law enforcement does. What we're asking you to do is try to report it to law enforcement directly as fast as possible. And the reason for that is that if, let's say, for instance, you report it to one of your teachers and you report it in the morning, and then let's say that person ends up getting busy and can't report it right away to the staff or to law enforcement, and then something bad happens and we knew about it, it's definitely super unfortunate for something like that to happen. So to get rid of the middleman, what we'd really like everyone to do is try to somehow report that to law enforcement directly. There is a couple of different ways you can do that. Obviously me. You can come by my office anytime. And every conversation that you have with me will remain anonymous. We also have a hotline that we call WeTip. So it's, I think I have that written down here, that number. It's 1-800-782-7463. So it's 1-800-78-CRIME, basically. And you can call that number and you can make an anonymous statement, basically that you've heard or seen somebody say something, that an act of violence or something like that. You can also go on to the website, which is wetip.com, and you can fill out a couple of questions on that. It's going to ask you about the things that you've heard and seen. It's going to ask you with the school that you go to. It's going to ask you your age. You just kind of follow the prompt, go along with it, fill it out, make your statement, and you remain completely anonymous. And then that way our law enforcement teams can start looking into it so somebody doesn't get hurt.
So that's first thing. First thing, you want to report it to a police officer if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't feel comfortable with that, if you don't have access to the wetip.com or any of that, absolutely you can report it to your parents, tell a teacher, come find me, Mr. Adams, anyone, and we'll get it handled. But like you said, the number one thing you want to tell a police officer, because that's that direct line.
Yes, and for instance, like last week, I know a lot of you are aware of the threats that we had towards it was SHS High School, which ended up not being anywhere near us. But fortunately, there were a lot of students who basically screenshotted that message and sent it to me directly at my house. And I was able to get on the phone right away with the right people. We got FBI involved. FBI was able to track that IP address all the way out to Kentucky, and luckily it didn't have anything to do with our school. But because I had gotten those messages that I did from the students that sent it to me, we were able to get on it really quickly and make sure that it didn't have anything to do with our school.
Okay. One last thing I wanted to talk about, is there any other specific strategies that we can do kind of around the school just to make sure that we're safe here? Just some small but very big picture prevention strategies that we can all take responsibility as students and staff to help make sure that Shola High School is a safe place to be.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, the number one thing is to always be aware of your surroundings. I'm sure you've heard that before. One important thing to remember is that if you see something and it makes you feel awkward or it just seems out of place, you need to not ignore it, because you're probably right. Whatever it is that you're seeing is definitely out of place, and it needs to be said to somebody. I continuously walk laps around this school on a daily basis, and I couldn't tell you the number of times that I've removed rocks from the doors, where kids are putting rocks inside the doors and leaving them propped open.
And from the student perspective, it seems like
it seems
not a big deal. I needed to head out, and I know it's going to be locked when I try to come back, so I'm going to put a rock there so I can get back in.
Yeah.
But what sort of liability does that now bring to the school?
Right, and for us it becomes a very big issue, because now we don't have any accountability about who's coming in our school and who's leaving our school. If we prop a door open on the far, south edge of school or whatever, and people come in that side, we don't even know that they're in the building because they're not checking in the office. So this is a very dangerous thing for us to deal with. We need to make sure that we're not propping these doors open at all. I've got kids out on the sidewalk out of Loft Green's photography class who are outside taking pictures, who prop the door open and take pictures outside and then come right back in. Unfortunately, we've got to make sure that stops happening, because you just never know who's going to come in that door behind you.
And I'm gonna send that request out even further. Even if you're not someone who's putting the rocks in the doors, if you're walking by and you see it, if you come into a door and you notice that it didn't shut all the way and it didn't lock all the way, clear the rocks out, shut it. If we all take, there's 800 students here, there's only one of me and one of you, and so if every student takes responsibility in this, it will go a long way. So thank you, Officer Ellsworth, for helping us out here today. I just want to make one final comment, and that's just, it's focused around love and around caring for those around you. And really, truly, when you look at the heart of where this is coming from, it's from these kids and these people, even adults a lot of times, that they just got a lot of deep down pain going on. And you just never know how far a simple compliment, a simple, hey, how you doing today? Anything like that can go. You never know. And so whenever we talk prevention strategies and all that, I have to mention something about just loving the people around you and being kind to them, not bullying. All that sort of stuff can go a very, very long way in keeping this school safe and keeping the community around you a better place. So thank you for listening to us today. We hope you take a lot of this into consideration, and we'll talk to you and we'll see you around school. Thank you.
Thank you.